On this edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast, we are speaking with a PMEA legend. That's coming up next. Take Note podcast. It's another on the road edition. I know we haven't done one of these in a while. We try to just change the backdrop as much as we possibly can throughout the year. We're coming to you today from Erie, Pennsylvania, the site of the 2024 PMEA conference. And I am delighted to have here what I would characterize as a PMEA legend.
Thank you.
He doesn't agree, I don't think, but
No.
I absolutely would say that. Dave Cree. Thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here with you.
And I say that because in my days before I worked for PMEA, when I was on the industry side, yours is a name that I heard through all the years as being so impactful into the things that happened at PMEA. So,
I have been active in PMEA.
Yes, and so let's talk there a little bit. Let's start there. So kind of give us like your bio, right? I think people may know you, but they may know like some of the work you've done now. Let's go back and tell us about your career.
Oh, sure. I graduated from Westchester State College in 1973, and I went immediately and got a job at the Bellefonte Area School District, which is about 10 miles out of State College, Penn State. And I was there for my whole career. Taught for 30 years at the high school, and then I was moved to the elementary band, and I finished out my career 5 years in an elementary program. And throughout that 35 years, and of course the years that have followed, I became very active in PMEA. I started out as the PMEA Secretary Treasurer in PMEA District 4. Central Pennsylvania and so forth. And I began my career as the Secretary Treasurer, and I was in that position for a number of years. And during that time, I became friends with Irene Chrisman, who is a PMEA legend. Right. And she encouraged me to get involved. So I ended up running for president. This was in the mid-90s, and I was fortunate enough to be elected. And in those days, it was a 5-year, 6-year position, 2 years as a vice president, learning the job, 2 years as president, and 2 years as the past president. And it's probably still very similar to that. I followed another legend in PMEA, Natalie Ozeas, who she was my mentor, and I really loved her a lot. She's still a good friend and so forth. My other responsibilities in PMEA kind of grew as I got involved at the presidential level. When I was president, or perhaps as past president, MENC, the forerunner of NAFME, was interested in beginning an Eastern Division jazz ensemble. And I had an interest in jazz and so forth. So I was the person that created that Eastern Division jazz ensemble, 11 states, and I did 5 different MENC conferences, so we had 5 different jazz bands, and it was just a wonderful experience. It was literally the best jazz student from each of 11 states, because you had to pick someone from each state. Every state had to be represented. So I would go to the selections committee every year, and I'd go through, like the Vermont kids and the New York kids and so forth. And that was really neat. So I spent about 10 years doing that. And about that time, the position of all-state coordinator of all the 650 at that time all-state jazz kids. So I spent 10 years doing that, and met a lot of people and lots of great kids that I still see occasionally, and it's really exciting. In the time since I finished doing that, I have continued to serve in a way that Abby needs. You know, maybe she needs a committee to select the all-state piano accompanist. So I help her out with that. I review all those. Maybe the jazz kids, I'll go through the saxophones or the rhythm section and so forth. I was a piano major in college, so you know, it helped me in those kind of things. And I help in the planning of the conference when I can. I'll listen to maybe the bands or something, you know, their videos are you know, reviewed, and then I say, well, this is my highest ranked group and so forth like that.
So I think it's really interesting. One of the first points you talk about was your entire career in the same school district. That is a rarity now.
That doesn't happen much anymore.
Yeah. So I think like any college kids that might be watching that's when their jaws dropped. I mean, like that.
Yeah, they say to me, you were there for 35 years? And I said, that's what we did in that, that era.
And to stay, you know, for most of that time in the same position. Because then the next step down, like I see a lot of people, okay, yeah, I stay in a district for this amount of time, but you're bounced around. You might be the high school band director for a couple of years, then elementary for a couple of years, then middle school, you know.
Yeah.
So you were in a different era then, for sure.
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So one of the other things that you were part of in a very pivotal time in PMEA's history was the transition of executive directors, which now has only happened twice. You know, we've only had 3 executive directors. You were there, as you mentioned, Irene Chrisman. You were there of the transition. So Irene reels you in to be president, right? And then you're part of figuring out who's going to replace her.
That was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
We became convinced that it was time for Irene to retire. She had done it for 40 plus years, and she was starting to age, as we all do. And I was the president at the time. So we decided to ask her to retire. And she agreed to that months ahead of time. When we got closer to that time, she decided she didn't want to retire. So it became more of a challenge for me. And I was her right-hand man for years and years and years. And we developed a not great relationship, you know, because she kind of blamed me for that. And that was my biggest disappointment. A lady who I admired and had been a very best friend to, she really stopped talking to me and never talked to me the rest of her life. Yeah.
You know, I did not know that part of the story. So here
I don't talk about it much.
Ready to retire, and then
she decided maybe she didn't want to retire.
My goodness. Wow.
So I was involved in the hiring of the new executive administrator, PMEA, and then she had to work with Irene as we made the transition, and Margaret and I became close friends because we had to work together, and Irene just wouldn't have anything to do with me anymore.
Wow.
So that was sad.
So that's, you know, that's an interesting lesson, I think, there. This, you know, you had to put what was the right thing for the association, because and obviously in that situation you weren't the only one making that decision.
Oh no, I was not. You know, I was just, you know, carrying out the wishes of the organization.
Yeah. So you had to put professional before personal.
Ooh,
and that's, I'm sure
it was difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. And but PMEA certainly flourished under Margaret Bauer taking over.
Oh, Margaret
after.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
And she had a tough job. I don't know if you've interviewed her. She would probably agree that it was very challenging getting Irene to retire.
Yeah.
Irene had all of the PMEA records and materials in her house.
Right. There was no office building.
And we couldn't get to it unless she would bring it. She wouldn't allow anyone in the house.
Yeah.
It was just a real challenging time.
Yep. Yeah. Well, wow. Interesting, you know, to have to go through that, but certainly some lessons there, that professional over personal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So another big thing that you didn't mention, which I am completely fascinated by, is kind of what you do now, in that you work with the Penn State Blue Band doing instrument repair.
I do.
How did that come about?
Well, that's, again, almost a 35-year story. I started when I was at a conference or workshop with Dr. Bundy. Dick Bundy was the assistant director of the Blue Band at the time, and Ned Deal was the director. And I said to Dr. Bundy, do you ever need any help with anything? Because I was looking to do something different in my life, because I was pretty much done with PMEA by that point. And he said, well, yeah, I do need people. And I said, well, I want to do something, so we got together. And my early years, we didn't have a building. We did everything in trailers. And so I basically started as an assistant to Dr. Bundy. There was no place to fix instruments at that point. Anytime anything would break, they'd just send it out to the repair shop. And the job evolved over the years. I initially started as an assistant director, and I was on a sabbatical 1 year, and I was the official assistant director, and he had no staff other than me.
Wow.
And the majorette instructor and the percussion guy and so forth.
That's evolved.
And over the years, the staff has just expanded, and the aging process was starting to catch up with me. So I have basically switched from doing assistant director kind of jobs to maintaining and repairing the instruments and equipment. I didn't go to repair school, but at Bellefonte, I began trying to learn how to fix instruments, and I'd go to workshops and things like that, because my budget wasn't very big, which was common. So rather than having to send an instrument out to spend $100 on, if I could fix it, I saved $100 in the budget, and that transferred over nicely to Penn State. We went from having 2 trailers on a practice field, where I would try to do repairs in there. There was no power, so we had a little generator, and I would, bring in a light, and I would work under there. No heat, no water, no electricity. So that was the beginning of my repair work. And then about 15 years ago, we were fortunate that they built a building, which has now become the O. Richard Bundy Band Building. And I have a shop in there, and I do as many of the instruments as I know how to do. Anything that's beyond my skill level, I send to the shop, because I'm not a professional repair person. But there's a lot of things I do know how to do.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, one of the nicest things I get to do is I recruit students from the Blue Band or the School of Music that just want to learn how to maybe do a little bit of repair. And this is the beginning of my busiest time of the year, when I have to get all of the instruments cleaned and polished and lubricated and tested and everything. We have almost 400 instruments, and across the summer until band camp, I have 10 students that help me usually, or maybe a dozen, and we work a couple hours every afternoon on that, and that's the repair crew.
I mean, is it kind of like never ending though, like throughout the year even?
It is, but this time of year is definitely the busiest, because and COVID really hit home on that. It was important that no students were sharing an instrument. We didn't want to share germs or anything like that. So everything has to be cleaned so that it's safe for the students. And we now have 4 athletic bands, some of which have their own instruments, and we work on all of those.
So then let me just clarify this. So you're saying 400 instruments. This is 400 instruments for the athletic bands. We're not,
Correct.
This is not concert bands.
No.
So you're just dealing with athletic bands. And there is that much, and there is that much constant work.
This time of year, there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Fortunately, since I'm there every day during the marching season, if someone dents an instrument or breaks something, I'll try to fix it for the next day's rehearsal. So it doesn't add up and accumulate like what we're faced with in the summer.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point there when you say dent, because I think, a lot of high school bands might say, well, okay, the sousaphone got dented, but it's still fine on Friday night. That's not going to work in a Big Ten band that is known for like silver sousaphones.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, that's not going to work there. So you're I'm sure on overdrive.
I do a lot of de-denting of little, dents and so forth. A lot of kids have little problems with their instruments. Pads fall out occasionally.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that the Blue Band provides instruments for every student, so they have matched sets of instruments in every section.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. It's remarkable.
For sure. So you've traveled then with the Blue Band a lot over the years. So I'm curious for some, favorite stories or memories that you can share in a public podcast.
I sure can. Well, if you follow Penn State at all, they've been to the Rose Bowl 4 times in the years that I've been involved in the band. And my favorite experience was really the first Rose Bowl, because I was like a tourist there, just looking around, and it was just amazing bands. And they say there's between 1 and 2 million people along the parade route. And it was just so exciting. The first year I was there, you could smell the floats going by, the flowers. It was just an amazing thing. It was the most remarkable marching band event that I had been part of. And in that first Rose Bowl parade, we had a wonderful young lady who was a feature twirler. And she had a little outfit that had, it went across her like this and had one place where it was attached at the top. And in the middle of the parade, I'm in the back of the band, the majorette instructor came running back to me with this young lady. She had broken the clasp, so her front was going to fall down if we didn't do something. So that was my most important repair in the first Blue Band parade, in the Rose Bowl. That's way at the top of the list of weird things I've fixed. Yep.
That's funny. I got to tell you, I went to the Rose Parade this year for the first time to watch, and everything.
Isn't it an amazing spectacle?
Absolutely, and you can smell the floats go by, and it is. I've been involved in marching band experiences my whole life, and I love marching band so much. That is truly such a unique experience. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine what it's like with a college band to be embedded and then to go to the game and be part of that.
Well, the great thing about all college bands is that you're working with talented students, smart students, very organized and very confident, and it's a great group to work with. And I've always enjoyed not only my high school band, which I loved, but the Blue Band is just terrific. Yeah. It's been a real honor. Dr. Drain, who's the current director, after Dr. Deal and Dr. Bundy, they've only had 5 directors in 125 years. And I've been fortunate to be part of almost 35 years of history, and it's a pretty neat experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And just the great football you've got to see in person.
Oh, and you see every band in the Big Ten is just a wonderful band. So we get to go to an away game, one game every year, because it's just so terribly expensive and so far away and so forth. We only go to one substantial trip, and you get to see those other bands, and they're marvelous bands. And like you and I discussed, the equipment and instruments are, wonderful instruments. And Penn State, I'm really proud of how nice the kids take care of the instruments and keep them polished. That's my big thing.
It's part of the look.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah. Yeah, and for people who've never gone to a collegiate game, even at Westchester State College, which I get it.
Has evolved nicely into the university.
You go to that level, but if you can go and take in a game at Beaver Stadium, it is like nothing you've ever experienced. Just to watch the
one of the largest stadiums in the country.
The students, to watch the band. Just, I would be fascinated, when I've gone to several games, but, like, I want to watch the game, but then I'm also kind of watching, like, the logistics of the band. Because that's something that's happening the whole game. So kudos to you and the staff there. That's a lot of work that happens.
Oh, yeah. We have wonderful staff. We have had lots of great grad assistants over the years, and tons of really great kids.
And lots of great memories for
all
those kids, and lots of memories for you too. Yeah.
There's lots more than fixing one feature twirler.
Yes, no, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, Dave, I got to tell you, this has been fascinating to gain some insight into your history, and I'm sure there's more stories we can tell off camera.
There are some that I can't tell on camera.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to do with this too. So thanks for being with us. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
Mark. Thanks for asking me.
And thank you all for joining us on this edition of PMEA's Take Note Podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, the Grove City College Department of Music. We will see you next time.